and welcome back to the Firearms Nation podcast. I'm really excited that you guys are here tonight because I have a good friend and very cool dude on the show tonight, and it is going to be Bennie Cooley. I've had him on a long time ago, and I was just talking to him about it that I think we met in 2016 SHOT Show, and I was very impressed with him then. He was good friends with Bruce Gray, so that's how I got in contact with him. But we're going to talk a little bit about the competition that he's doing. I've trained with him before, and I'm very curious to see how his training has changed. And we'll talk a little bit about self-defense and protection. And if there's any questions that you have, of course, please leave them in the chat. Because remember, this is not only a podcast interview, but for some, it is going to be a live chat or live show with a chat feature. I am enjoying doing this since the beginning of 2023. We're already in March. Been pretty consistent about doing these live shows. And I want to know, do you guys like the live shows? Do you like this new podcast format? Because we are recording video podcasts, and at the same time, believe it or not, we are recording audio podcast. So I'm going to do my interview now with Bennie Cooley. And remember, if you do have any questions, leave them to the end. And of course, thank you all for being here tonight. So without further ado, Bennie, how are you?
Well, hey, great. It's a pleasure to be here, and yeah, it's been a while since SHOT Show, and I can't remember went out there and taught a class out in your guys' area, and it's been a few days as well.
I
So I'll
want to
have to look at
say,
coming back out there and visit with you guys.
well, also I want to say to everyone who is watching us live, Bennie is working out of his remote operation way up in the top mountains of Idaho. So there is a slight delay. So sometimes Bennie and I might talk over each other. I'm going to try and be good. I'm trying to do very good radio ops where I give him a second to respond to something and I don't respond until that second comes back. But that being said, I believe that we had, and let me tell you, everybody who's listening to this, if you have an opportunity to train, whether it's pistol or rifle with Bennie, jump on it. I'm sure, and I'll leave his social accounts and whatever in the show notes, but if you reach out to him, I'm sure you can work on setting something up, and we'll talk about what kind of classes he's teaching. But it was by far, and I've trained with everybody. In my position in law enforcement, I was able to, and in privately, I've been able to train with a ton of people. His was the best class. I would say it was his class and Jerry Barnhart's class. I mean, I did rifle with him and I did pistol with Jerry Barnhart. Very fortunate, very blessed to be able to train with both of them. But it was a great class. But that was back in, I want to say 2018.
Yeah, yeah, that sounds about right. Yeah, and I appreciate the compliment. I'm just passing on knowledge has been given to me, so through the organization, things I've learned there, and just being with other professional shooters and picking up points on them and how to be able to do things and streamline it. So it's been pretty effective. It's been a good ride. We was talking about the PRS match I just shot here recently, which is stands for Precision Rifle Series. In that division, I was shooting a different rifle than what they normally shoot. I was shooting my Seekins PH2, which is a hunter weight. It's 11.5 pound guns, and most of the PRS rifles are around 20 pounds. So I don't do a lot of the PRS. It's kind of an open format for heavy guns that really push the envelope on accuracy and cartridge design and the different tools that you can push out there for accuracy at long range. My main forte is in what's called the National Rifle League Hunter Series. So it's based around the lighter platform gun, something you could work with, where it's a work gun for 16 pounds that you can come into as a heavy side of it, or the light side is 12 pounds and under. And it's been good because it's based around hunting out in the mountains and the fields and different locations where you actually have to do field courses. The field courses usually are about a mile and a half to 2 miles. It's 20 stages. and all your targets are unknown. So you got to find them, range them, get arm time, figure out all your dope, the wind. So it's a good translation to a degree of a more dynamic situation you'd see the military in, and seeing different military groups that are now starting to embrace that type of competition because it kind of fits in the platform of their weapon systems. And it's been a lot of fun. I really like the long gun competition, always have. But being so busy with the three gun world, when the PRS started real hard, I just was not able to dedicate the time over there to be able to do that. So, things kind of change, learn different things. I really enjoy it because I'm learning so much, right? I'm becoming that new student again. So that's a big benefit. It's amazing that you can go out, and I've been doing this for quite a while, right? And I'm always learning. So it doesn't matter, right? I mean, I not only learning from a professional shooter, but standpoint of watching others or competing with them. But I've seen people who are just kind of midline shooters that have taught me many things of I never thought to do it or look at it that way, right? Where it's breaking the stage down or how they set up their equipment to be able to be more effective. So, you can always learn, but it's a hoot, man. It's a lot of fun. It's They use 20 matches throughout the year, and then they'll have what's called the Grand Slam just prior to hunting season out in the West, which will be this August in Laramie, Wyoming, which is a cool place to shoot. Last year we shot there and we had sustained winds over 30 miles an hour. So to say it was humbling is an understatement, right? When you're out there trying to find your targets, engage them, and stuff like that. So it's been fun. I still love three gun, do the handgun stuff here locally. Three gun will always be part of my life, because it just ties into my work and the training and stuff that I do. But the long gun has really been an exciting place to be able to transition over into.
So there's a lot to unpack in that opening salvo. Um, all right, so let's start with the hunter series that you're fond of doing. Are you actually hunting, or are they putting up hunting silhouettes? And you're doing all this in a 2 mile radius. What what's the ammo count for something like that? Break that so people can understand that more. Who aren't used to,
Yeah,
because a lot of the people that listen to the show, they're mostly either three gun or they're action pistol, one form or another, or they're in the tactical side. But so this hunting aspect is different. So explain it more.
yeah, I'd love to. So it's based around Scott Satterley started it 3 years ago, and for those who don't know him, he was SF long gunner for those guys up in First Group and different places. So he's the one that actually started this series, and the targets are basically based on the animal's kill zone, the diameter of a kill zone of like a deer or an elk or antelope or bears, coyotes, stuff like that. And what you'll do is you'll start in the field, and they're all blind stages. So you have your backpack with you, your all the systems that you're going to use, and they'll start you maybe 50 yards away from where you can start to identify your targets. So you have 4 minutes to get to your start position where you can now range your target, find them and range them. And they'll give anywhere from one target where you might have just like one target to engage, but you got four positions you got to shoot. Or they'll go up to four targets and you're just in one position, but you got to locate them, shoot them in order uh, that they designate, right? And communicate that with your spotter. And then once you shoot those targets, you pack up all your stuff and you move. So you never are with your squad. You're constantly moving throughout the mountains, whatever terrain they have, right? But there's a real art to be able to find your own targets. I remember when we first started in this, you would go to a stage and look for 4 minutes, and it's like, didn't find a target. In fact, when they first did this first match I had was up in Colorado, Grand Junction, which is a phenomenal range. And the last stage, we was the last year's last stage. I was the last shooter of that group. I didn't find my targets. So I went back to my truck discouraged, grabbed my spot and scope, went back out there. It took me 15 minutes to find my target. So it's an art, right? It's a lost art where you're trying to be able to find your targets under pressure, under time, and be able to engage them. And what they do is they have three different divisions. So it's based around a hunter series, and they actually use the Idaho rules for the weights of the rifle. So a factory division is you can't make any modifications to the weapon system. And they have a 243 or 6 millimeter cartridge diameter bullet or higher, right? So they get rid of the little short cartridges like the PRS shooters are using. And the open light is you can build a custom rifle, but then you have to make a power factor of 380,000. So basically, bullet times your velocity, right, to get your power factor, similar to what we do in USPSA. So that drives you up to like a 6.5 caliber. A lot of people shoot 6.5 Creedmoor, 6.5
Mm-hmm.
PRC, or their regular hunting guns. And then the heavy division, which is you cannot hunt in Idaho with a rifle that weighs more than 16 pounds. So the open heavy division is you still have to make that power factor, but your weapon can be the system that you're using. Everything without the magazine can't weigh over 16 pounds. So that's how they divide you up in your classes. And then what they also did to be able to try and educate people in hunting and how to be more ethical and learn, basically what their skill set was and their capabilities is they have a skills division. So it's half the entry fee. And as you go to each stage, the spotter will actually help you walk you into the targets if you can't find them, help you so that you're learning to engage them. Because what they're trying to really do is they're trying to get people more involved in the shooting sports, where I can grab my deer hunting gun that I've had that my dad handed down to me or my grandpa, and I can go out there and practice these fieldcraft skills and get better at being able to go out and go hunting. So they're really driving that home, and they're doing, there's 20 major matches across the U.S. this year in this series, but they're also doing what they call Hunter One. So it's 1 day matches. So you're finding a lot of these clubs that do the PRS and stuff like that they're starting to put these on as well because, Scott Satterley, he kind of hit the nail on the head when he didn't like it because he had a 22-pound gun that he couldn't use for anything else. I'm not going to walk in the mountains with it. If I can't drive there in my truck, I'm not going to take it. It was for a sport, right? Which that sport has helped develop a lot of technology. Kind of like if you take USPSA, the open division has driven a lot of things in bullet design, cartridge design, compensators on handguns, red dots on handguns. If we would have never allowed that to happen, I doubt if we'd be progressed to the point we are right now in the equipment that we utilize and stuff. So that's what the match is. It's called, the organization is called NRLhunter.com. So look it up. It will make you a better shooter. I mean, it's taken all that, the principles of, with your AR and stuff, you'll definitely up your game. When I work with the military or I work with SWAT teams or whatever, I always tell them, it's like, what's the downside to taking a recce guy, a long range guy, sniper, and giving him a short gun? He wants to be too precise, right? So the benefit is they learn all those marksmanship skills where they can deliver a precise shot, and they're very detailed in everything they're doing. So it's cross blending those together, and I think it makes you, excuse me, I think it makes you a better overall shooter. It definitely, every time I picked up long gun, it would always translate better when we're shooting any three gun matches if we had any targets at distances. Shooting targets at 100, 200 yards, there's a different skill set required to be able to engage targets more effectively at distance once you get past those, and especially as the targets get smaller. But the NRL Hunter, we gauge out to 1,000 yards. Most of the targets are going to be 500 to 700 yards. And that's true with the PRS. Most of their target engagements will be between 400 to 800 yards. You'll sometimes have engagements out to 12 to 1,300 yards, but those are very few. That's not where the match is won. It's to engage those targets effectively in those shorter ranges, but off of different type of props that you just wouldn't think about shooting from, right? Rocks, trees, bipods, tall bipods, tripods, stuff like that.
Well, I saw that video that you posted from your PRS match, and first of all, it sounded like a war zone. There was just so much gunfire going on,
Yeah,
and second
yeah,
of all, you were
yeah.
humping
It's
to get
cool.
into different positions. What was that all about?
So what you didn't see, and I didn't post, is that stage was 10 positions. So you have 90 seconds to engage. It was a single target, but you had to engage from 10 different positions on a series of big rocks. So instead of posting a big long video, right, I just posted the last three. So it was everything from positions similar to what you saw me shoot at the end to standing up over top of rocks and yeah, you have to hustle. You have to really get on it because not only that, what people I see a lot of people struggle. They can't find the target through their scope, right? They bump up too much magnification and they're behind the gun. They just can't find the target. So time goes away from them. And while it's funny, I had people respond to that and say, "Wow, the gun didn't move." It's like you were not looking to the crosshairs because those things were all over the place, right? It's just you can't see that and respect that in those positions. It's hard to get on that small of a target and be able to effectively engage them. So that was the last three shots of a 10-shot stage that you saw there. But most of them are you'll move like 3 to 4 positions, 2 rounds. Usually the round count for a PRS match is normally 10 shots per stage. Sometimes there'll be 12. And in the NRL Hunter series, so a PRS match, let's back up a little bit for educational purposes, is usually a 200 round uh, course of fire. So they'll have, 20 stages, averages out 10 rounds per stage, anywhere from 200 to 220 rounds. In the NRL Hunter series, uh, usually it's 16 to 20 stages. And the most you can actually shoot if you miss every shot is 8 rounds. So if you impact and hit the target, it's worth 2 points in the NRL Hunter. If you miss it, you can try one more time and get 1 point. But if you miss it after that, it's gone. And historically, when you get new people out there, usually they'll shoot less than 100 rounds because they can't find the targets or they can't make it under time. By the time they they're not using their time wisely because it's a system, right? You got to learn how to be proficient in setting up, spotting, getting on your gun positions. And it seems like 4 minutes is a long time, but it goes by real quick.
So compare that, or is it contrast that? Compare that to something like three gun. Uh, in three gun, you're moving on the stages, and you really don't have. I mean, from the videos you posted, you're up in the mountains shooting at really far distances. Three gun's a little bit more intimate. Which do you like better, shooting the three gun or shooting these long distance matches?
Man, I love them both. I mean, it's like people saying, "What's your favorite?" It's like, are you crazy? It's like I can have more than one favorite, right? They're just different. You know, um, it's more mental. It's more tedious in the long range. Now, let me frame that up, right? You've got to worry about your wind, learning the dynamics of the wind and making sure your equipment's squared away prior to going to the match and truing your data, your dope, whatever you want to call it. And knowing how to do all those different things is really an art. And it's challenging mentally. Um, in a longer duration, where three gun is very challenging as well, right? Because it's compressed, but most of the time you're not trying to hunt for a target. You're shooting at distances that really the accuracy is not that important. In other words, a 2 minute 2 MOA rifle is going to be adequate for what you need to do with three gun. It won't be adequate for the other, right? For the PRS, the NRL Hunter, you need to have a good solid half MOA gun at all distances, right? And so it's different, challenging that way, because you're always trying to figure out what the wind and the environment's doing to your trajectory of your bullet. And the three gun, it's trying to remember what to do, what to shoot, what order, where to step to get you on target quicker, right? So they blend well together, but they're distinctively different. Um, I think that the three gun is probably harder, right? Mastering the handgun, shotgun, rifle, and all that stuff takes a longer time. But the mental side of the long range is can be pretty challenging. You've really got to be able to be thinking ahead and reading the environment and how much it affects your bullet and what to do and how to get in the best positions. You know, um, there's an art to it. There's an art that if you approach the rifle the wrong way, all of a sudden you've shifted your impact a half m away, right? Distance, which means you now miss the target. So now you're guessing, was my input into the rifle system causing that, or did I just misread the environmental conditions? So I will say that the three gun's harder as far as maintaining, right? Because you got to maintain three systems. And I see a lot of people fail in the three gun world, historically, is because they couldn't keep three guns running, right? One of the guns would go down the match, which would cost you the match as well, or could. So, that part is harder as far as on your equipment and everything. Um, but yeah, they're a little bit different area, but they're both very challenging.
So before we go any further into competition and three gun, uh, I'd be remiss without bringing up your background. So you've been, as we just discussed, in law enforcement for almost 40 years, correct?
Yeah, tied to it in a way. I mean, I'm not a sworn officer anymore, but yeah, I still work for them, do stuff with the organization and stuff. Yes.
And what essentially is your background for the people who don't know you?
Yeah. So my background is with the Department of Energy here in Idaho, the Idaho National Laboratory. And so to kind of give you a perspective, when our organization started, we had some basically 20 years of my career. I've had somebody from a tier one organization in the military as our leaders. So we just had great leadership. We were just very lucky at the time. The other thing is that we had unlimited budget in in comparison to what law enforcement, federal or state have, and we had the manpower. So doing that, my basic selection process was 800 hours to be able to get through selection for a SWAT team. So I spent a long time in the SWAT environment out there. And we had the ability to go and look at specialties where it was explosive breaching, long gunning, handgun shooting, stuff like that. So we developed shooting teams. So we'd go across the country and see, you know, how can we shoot better, right? Because when we first started, we started with point shooting because the people who were basically our leaders, or that's how they did it, right? And that's the guys back in Fort Bragg, the unit. So that's what we did. And then as we went out and competed, I never will forget. I was at a match in Nampa, Idaho, and I was watching a guy get ready to shoot, and there's a lot of partials, no shoots, stuff like that. And man, this guy just destroyed this course fire. I mean, in other words, he crushed it. He just crushed the course fire. And like an idiot, right? I walked up to him. I'm like, "Did you see your sights on every one of those shots?" And he's like, he looked at me. He's like, "You idiots!" Like, yeah, I did. Right? We were point shooting. Rarely did we use the sights, except for distance because that's what we're taught. But keep in mind, when we were doing that, we had basically 48 man team, and our budget for ammunition was 1.2 million rounds, and we shot 1.2 million rounds a year, right? Because we trained 24/7. But anyway, that individual's name was Jim Wall, and he's the vice president of Milt Sparks. And once we saw that, it's like, wow, we're really missing the boat. How did we not see this sooner, right? So with the shooting team, we competed, got better. We brought that knowledge back into the teams. Um, Competing, I fell in love with it. I was a very, competitive person. It's just my nature. And I was fortunate enough to be able to win a few matches, really liked it, and saw how well it tied into what we did organizationally, and just pursued it from there. So, I was smart enough to be able to take advantage of the opportunity, I guess you could say. And we were lucky, right? You take it like a law enforcement agency, back in the time that we were on team and stuff like that, is, you guys had a shortage of people, you were under budget, you didn't have equipment, and you did everything. And if you had a 20 man department, you also had a SWAT team, and people didn't try out for it, you were appointed, like you're on SWAT, right? It's just a whole different environment for us to be able to grow up in and mature through. So, that's kind of my background with that organization. Now I oversee the safety side of the house. And that's just through all the experience of the bad decisions I made when I was younger, right? I got more experience, so like, don't do that. That's going to hurt. So it's a good job. It's been a great career. We've had ties with the military and law enforcement organizations that have really helped us grow organizationally and individually. So this is basically all I've done all my life. And, when I was doing a bunch of it, I was approached to be able to do some teaching. And when I first started, I started with, I was big on teaching civilians how to defend themselves, because they're the ones that's going to get the brunt of it, right? They're their own first responders, basically. Had a lot of law enforcement that came to the classes, did some law enforcement work, and then I got tied in with the military and actually got brought back to different organizations back in Bragg and on the East Coast, and started working with those guys. So it kind of went full spectrum, right? They started our organization. We had a couple commanders that came from back there at the unit who helped us tremendously. And then through the years, I've been able to help some of them back, right, with some of my shooting skills and the things that I've learned just on the shooting side of the world. So I still do a lot of work with military organizations, law enforcement, which is really my love, to be able to do. But I also I like teaching civilians, because there's a lot of really good people out there that need to know how to protect themselves, right? And it's not their day-to-day job, but they also have a reality of what the world is, where they live. So, I just don't have the opportunity because I'm short on time.
Who would you say, looking back, because I know a lot of people in the tactical world, when they're referring to some of the training they got, it all comes back to a couple people like you and Jerry Barnhart and Rob Latham. Uh, but who influenced you to get to where you are today?
Oh man, there's a lot of people. But I would say the individual who really pushed me, who helped me make that jump to where you make that jump where you become not only competitive, but where you can actually win national level matches. And that was Mike Voigt. He's a good friend of mine. He since has passed away. Um, but we shot a lot together, and he was a phenomenal shooter. And one thing I really admired about him was, he's very diverse. It wasn't not only the handgun stuff, but he did the three gun. He was really one of the pioneers in the three gun world as far as USPSA and getting them on board. And he was actually the president for USPSA for quite a while. And he also did a bunch of shotgun, like sporting clays. He was big on precision and precision rifle, long range stuff. And we shot multiple competitions together as a two-man team. And that doing those things makes you a better shooter. You have so much more knowledge and experience when you When you can spread out and learn the different disciplines and then see where some of those things come in together and mesh, it'll make you an overall better shooter. But yeah, I mean, I was a master class shooter, but I just couldn't get over the hump, right? I mean, master class, grandmaster for local range club stuff, but I just couldn't win, couldn't put it all together. And then working with Mike and shooting with him and some of the things that he taught me on how to understand not only how to train, but also the speed and the thought process and how to break down a stage, a fire, and those things was just enough to be able to push me up over that, break that hump, that there was sometimes we get stuck in. Like if I'm going from a B class to also an A class, and it's a bunch of small things that you have to put together. And then pretty soon it just becomes part of you, right? So yeah, Mike Voigt was a big influence on my shooting. There's other people too, right? Good friend of mine, Doug Ivanzik, who was big time USPSA handgun shooter, who came to our organization at our range complex, and he was our lead range master, ran the ranges and stuff, and he really gave me that first bump, right? Led our shooting teams, took us to matches, gave us a big push, but the final touches that really made the difference for me was Mike.
What, if you can recall, what were some of those things that you had to figure out that got you, like you said, those little things that put together that put you over the top?
It's a mental game, right? I mean, there are certain physical things that how you drive the gun and how you do different things and how you practice for certain things, but really it comes down to the mental part. It's I'm amazed. Back in the day, you would order your handguns, your open guns, and it was a year and a half, 2 year wait, right, to get a gun built. Um, in the same sense, there was not in the first 10 years of my shooting career, there was no such thing as a grandmaster, as master class shooters. And it would take somebody 5 to 7 years to become a master class shooter who could win matches. Now you'll have people who can become a master class or grandmaster in a year because training is so much more available to them, right? YouTube, what to practice, the equipment that we have out there to be able to help us practice and be successful. However, it cannot teach you experience. So you'll see people who will shoot with the guys who are winning all the major matches, and a local club match, they'll beat them, right? They'll beat them on stages of fire, or sometimes they'll beat them at the local match, but they can't do it on a large scale match. And the reason why is because they've not learned how to control their visual patience, right? Um, and this is kind of I got taught this a long time ago, and basically it wasn't through shooting; it was through the operational side of what we do. But visual patience is basically being able to control the anxiety, right, that you create within your own self when you think you're going too slow. So it's being able to control that speed and knowing where you have to bleed it off and be in complete control and where now you can let it go. And most of the time, most of the people that have the potential to beat you, it's not that you shot better than them, you made less mistakes because they tried to push it too hard. They didn't know how to basically stay in the parameters where they could be successful. So you have these guys that can shoot these local matches and beat maybe Rob Latham during the day, but they could never beat him in a match because then they would try to ramp it up, right? And they weren't living within the parameters of their skill sets. So it's a mental. The big part is the mental and how to control it, how to be able to see things and understand what's going on, so you know how much to be able to push it. And that's a big part of it. It's the mental side that people are missing, and you can't get the mental side unless you compete over time, right? That's experience. I could read a book and I could watch and you could teach me how to shoot the gun, So I can perform all that at a very fast rate, but I don't know how to control the pressure, right? You have a new officer that you're working with, but he's never been in a stressful environment. That takes time to be able to maintain or learn how to control your composure. So that was a big thing. As you start getting towards the top level, it's the guys that know how to understand and control their emotions. They're still ramped up, right? Don't get me wrong, but they control it. They can control it and perform, and they know when to pull it back and they know when to let it go, right? Besides being all meticulous about everything that you need to be able to do as far as your equipment and the fundamentals of handling the gun and making sure the gun's running. But the real part that sets you above is, can you handle the pressure? And the only way you learn how to handle pressure is by putting yourself in that environment as much as you can, right? And then to be able to understand it. And there's a lot of people just don't understand the visual patient side of it. It's I remember one time distinctively, I was shooting a 3-gun match, and Tom Adair was his name. A great, really good shooter from Arizona, and it was a rifle stage, and I knew I could outshoot him. I knew I could beat him. Right, on a normal day, there was probably an 80%, 90% chance that I would be able to edge him out. And I watched him shoot this course of fire, and he just hammered the targets. Couldn't believe it. I mean, he's just like, wow, that was impressive. He walked back to me, and I was like 3 down from after he had shot. And he said, man, he's like, the targets are so easy. Just freaking, as soon as you get sight picture, just hammer it. Just, double tap it. It's easy to hit. So I think, cool, okay. And these targets are like 200, 250 yards away. So I get in there and I'm thinking, right, here's my sight picture. Boom, me, pull the trigger again, miss. Pull the trigger again, miss. I'm like, what is going on? But I was smart enough to say, okay, that's not working for you. Settle down, get a sight picture every time, and shoot the targets. Now, in my mind, I'm thinking, okay, he's going to beat me on this stage, but if I don't settle down, I'm going to get destroyed, right? I'm going to tank this stage of fire. When I got down, when I got down with the course of fire, I beat him by 6 seconds. Now, in my mind, I was trying to match what I was actually physically doing with the rhythm I heard him shoot it in, right? So I'm a firm believer that what happens is we can't understand time very well. And, they say that the mind really can't even understand it, can't rationalize it, because what happens is if we took drawing the handgun was a 10-step process. When we first learn it's 1, 4, 9, 10, right? We're missing steps. Somebody mentors or we mentor ourselves. And pretty soon, sequentially, we can do those 1 through 10, right? Without thinking about it. What happens when we're under stress? We're trying to now ramp it up, right? And the only time that your mind will try and correlate time is when you're competing or your life is in danger. Or in that, you never think about time, right? So when they're worried about the time instead of just letting it happen, their mind looks back and sees their body going from step 5 to step 6 and says, no, we need to be shooting now, we're going to lose the match, or we need to be shooting now or we're going to lose the gunfight, right?
Mm-hmm.
It starts to panic because it's rationalizing what's going on, right? You're trying to understand the time. And if you don't control that anxiety and let things happen how you've trained them, you're going to miss the target. You're going to move the gun, you're going to shoot too quick, or you're going to move the gun off the target as you're pulling the trigger, and you're going to miss the target. So, like, if you're angry, do you ever think about time? Like, have you ever messed the stage up? You were nervous initially, then you shot it, you're embarrassed, like, I want to shoot that again. And the second time, what do? You go through and you tear it up because you're not worried about time. You stop thinking about that, right? So in a tactical side, if I'm surprised because of the gunfight, right? I see the gun and my mind's immediately saying, I survived this by shooting him first. It looks back and sees the body gun from 4 to 5 and says, we need to be shooting him right now or we're going to lose. So what happens is people panic, right? Rightfully so. It's not easy to control, but they jump on the trigger too quick and they miss the guy in close. Also, what correlates is when they train, they don't shoot at that tempo, right? If you're shooting at 15 yards and in, you need to be able to effectively hit that target at 3.3 tenths of a second to 0.35 because you will shoot that fast in the gunfight. At a minimum, you're going to shoot that fast. So it's not hard to do, but you need to train it at that speed. However, when you see people training, what do? Especially for law enforcement, square range work. They don't shoot at that tempo of the same tempo they would be in a gunfight, right? In close parameters. They're not pushing that environment. So that means their timing is going to be off, which it lowers their likelihood of making a good target engagement.
Well, I like where this is going because it's fascinating. So, in the law enforcement community, there's a big emphasis on accuracy. All right. And I think it starts at the academy.
Mhm.
You're worried about passing the qualification. It's always how small of a group I can make. And I don't know if it had its roots originally in maybe NRA Bullseye or something, but it's definitely not from Action Pistol, where one of the first things that when I made that transition from just regular law enforcement officer to a law enforcement officer who also competes, my hardest thing was learning to shoot faster. I mean, that was so hard to let
Yeah.
go and to start to shoot faster. And then when I was teaching other cops, one of the things that I would do is get them used to shooting faster because the big thing for them was when they were trying to shoot faster, they were worried about missing. They were so, I mean, it was to the point of an anxiety. They were so stressed out about missing the target. And they're like, yeah, but look, I have hits all over the place. Like, yeah, but you're shooting at a speed, like you said, a speed that you'll probably be shooting at in a gunfight. You're going to be shooting super fast. So you need to get used to that feeling of operating at that fast speed. So my question for you is, other than something like that, what else could people do to feel? I mean, obviously, probably competition is one of the most helpful things for people to get used to deal with this anxiety from visual patients, or do you see them never getting past that?
Oh, I mean, they have to get past it, right? Um, in every department, the old saying, my interpretation, right? 100 people go to war, 90 are there to be killed. They're going to die in the gunfight. 10 will do the killing. 9 will do it out of the necessity. However, 1 will be the leader, right? He'll be the hunter of the group. So you have it in the department, right? You have people who, across the board, you have people who they just don't like shooting the gun, right? However, if they get in a gunfight, um, you know, their skill set is not going to rise to that level. They're going to deteriorate to whatever they've done in training. So it's not hard to be able to shoot at speed. You just got to be able to put time into it, right? And again, proximity of what you're aiming at, what you're shooting at. You've got to be able to have the accuracy. But however, like Rob Latham said, accuracy is not final unless it's done fast enough, right? So, we have people who, you'll find people who will tend, especially instructors who can't shoot faster, so they will limit those officers from practicing it that way, right? They'll say, slow it down. It's like, that's not how it's going to go down. Just go out and watch, the gunfights we've had on video. Time the shots. In close proximity, 10 yards, 15 yards and in, everybody's jumping on the trigger. They're going to shoot that fast. The problem is their timing's off or they're not used to being able to see it. It's like a concept of You ever been training people on the range? I'm a right hand shooter. I'm shooting the handgun and I shoot left of the target, right? I'm pushing, my timing's off. I'm anticipating the recoil. My timing's off a little bit. However, when I shoot faster, I've got good group on the left side of the target, 4 inches from center. I'm at 10 yards and I'm shooting at 3/10 splits, 0.3, 0.35. I'm getting on the trigger fairly decent at that distance. Okay. So I ask him, if I slow down and you tell the student to slow down, and now he's shooting at half tenths, half second splits or 6/10 splits, he's hitting the target dead center. Should we move the sights or should we just tell him to slow down? 99% of the instructors will tell him, slow down. You're not going to slow down in a damn gunfight. Move the sights. Tonight, when he goes on patrol and he gets in that gunfight, he's not going to slow down. Now, when I talk about, that it's pushed off to the side a little bit, he has to have a group over there, obviously, right? But that's real common for people to do, especially with designing the gun, how long the trigger pull is, where the trigger, fires within the frame of the gun, can all enhance that. So, you need to fight tonight. So I'm gonna move my sights, right? And I know that if it's if I'm shooting at a threat far enough away where I have time to think about it, I can say, well, I'm gonna compensate a little bit, right? Because I know my sights I'm shooting a little bit off to the side because I moved them, because most of my 95% of my gunfight, if they happen, is probably gonna be close proximity. So I'm gonna adjust that, and that just takes time, right? I never will forget when we first switched over to the Glock 22s, right? I had a hard time. I struggled with the Glock for quite a while, shooting it fast. I'm shooting at a Bianchi plate rack at 10 yards. I've told this to all my classes, but basically I'm shooting at the far right plate. I'm right-handed. I'm working from my right, working plate rack right to left. I aim at the far right plate. I knock the plate down to the left. Now I'm immediately embarrassed, and I kind of look around, but nobody knows I wasn't shooting at that plate right I knocked down, and I wasn't. So I shot the far right plate again, missed it, shot again, missed it, and I'm reading my sights. It looks like they're lifting off, right? But I'm pushing against the gun. My timing of the gun and how it fit my hand and where the trigger, where the trigger ended affected things differently. So I aimed at the next plate in and knocked the left plate down again. So it took me about a year. If I shot speed, quarter splits, 3/10 split at 15 yards, I was 3 or 4 inches to the left every time. It just took reps, right, to be able to get me over that hump. But that's the problem, is we're not teaching them how to shoot at the speed that they're going to have to on the street. Rarely do I see that happen. It's slow fire, aim fire, which is important. However, it's not realistic at those distances, that they've got to learn how to be able to push at those speeds. And that induces the stress, right? It's learning how to see things quicker. And everybody, for the most part, everybody can do that. They just got to put time into it, right? It's a feel of the gun. I remember one of our driving instructors, and I ask people, this all the time. It's like, when you're driving out there and the roads are wet, how do you know when the tires are going to break loose in your car? You run skid cars, right? In training, officers, you teach them how to control a skid, stuff like that, right? Yes.
Mm-hmm.
So how do they know when those tires are going to break loose? He basically summed it up like this: it's that computer chip that sits in the seat of your ass that you programmed. In other words, it's a feel. You can talk about it all day long, but it's strictly a feel. And the only way you get that feel is through reps. You got to be able to put the reps in. And so there's not a lot of people who are willing to do that. So if they don't get in a gunfight, good for them. If they do, it probably is not going to be beneficial for them.
What do you recommend for people? Because I know we're coming up on time, but what do you recommend for people for something like everyday carry, and how should they carry? Are you a more concealed guy? Are you more a open carry, depending on where you live? And tips for staying safe.
Yeah, I'm big on concealed carry. I don't like open carry. Um, you need to carry a gun that you can train with and be effective with. I really believe that you should progress hard to a red dot. Um, People who are aware of their surroundings, I believe they're more likely to use the gun to save somebody else or help somebody out than they are for themselves because they're going to pay attention to their environment, right? They're not going to go places they shouldn't go. Not going to be oblivious to the people who are around them. So the chances of them being seen as a victim versus an opponent, right, is different than somebody who's not paying attention to different things. So I think the red dot is a good plus to be able to have on your gun, and I also think that you should have a light, right, if at all possible. Um, Carry an extra mag, depending on where you're at. The gun needs to be comfortable, so you need to be able to how you wear the gun, the clothing style that you have. It needs to be comfortable for you to be able to wear day in, day out. It should be so comfortable that you actually forget that you have the gun on. So you need to make that a habit, and then be able to practice with that platform. Now, a lot of people, when they get these shorter compact guns, which I mean, I love my staccato. I've got a staccato that I pack, C2. I also love the P365 XL, right? Fantastic gun. Um, However, shooting that little 365 is not fun. So if I'm somebody who's, not going to shoot a lot or don't have a lot of experience, I advise them to buy two guns off the get go. If they can, they buy a 22 version of the gun that they want to pack or close proximity to that same size. So they practice with the 22. They practice the drawing, the sight picture, watching the gun recoil, and they shoot the compact gun that they're going to carry not that much, right? I see bigger benefits by buying a full size gun because it's going to be less impact onto you, right? Especially for women, because the guns are not fun. They recoil a lot. And so you got to make the training so that you like doing it, right? You can see results. It's not something that's going to scare you, the heavy recoil controlling it. So that's what I look at. My everyday carry, I carry a Surefire Staccato Light. I carry my Staccato 2011 C2 or the 365 XL. And then I carry a good knife and a spare magazine, depending on where I'm going. But I always have a knife with me, because it's a backup, right? Or if I'm in a conflict, somebody's going for my gun, I'm trying to stop them, I might have to use the knife to get them off me, right? I like a light, probably one of the best self defense because I'm not afraid to hit somebody for light. Where you'll see people pack a gun and a knife, and it's like they're both deadly force, right? So you might be hesitant before pulling one of those out. Where I could have a light in my hand, and use it to deter. I can use it for a striking weapon, stuff like that. And I think the biggest thing is people just need to be aware, right? They need to go to the range. They need to be proficient with the gun, and they just need to have good self awareness, right? If they move to a town, contact the local law enforcement. It's like, hey, where's bad parts of town? Stay out of certain places. A lot of officers will kind of tell them, it's like, hey, you probably want to avoid this after 8 o'clock at night. Um, but the self awareness is the biggest thing. Just paying attention to everybody who's around you. I remember I got told, I didn't read this, but I got told this by Tony Blauer. It was pretty fascinating a long time ago, and he was talking about the Boston Strangler, right? That he killed a lot of people, a lot of women, and when they finally hooked him up, they were talking about asking him, it's like, man, all these women, did they ever fight back? And he's like, yeah. It's like sometimes they would. He said, well, what'd you do? Well, how did you deal with them? He said, I let them go. because there's so many women out there that once he challenged them and threatened them, that they would just freeze up and not do anything, right? And then once he got them away, obviously, then that was the end of the story. But the women who paid attention, the women who challenged the women, right, or men, the chances of them getting into a confrontation is real low because they're paying attention to it. They're not oblivious. Same thing with my home. My home's a different animal. I own the turf here, and when I leave my bedroom, I'm not going to have a handgun. I'm going to have a rifle because usually you're going to have more than one person who's going to break into your home, and I need that threat to stop instantly. It's funny. I was working with some military group, and they were doing a hit, and they had one of the translators, interpreters with them, right? Saying there was only two guys in this house. So they go to approach the target. They put some ladders up to get over the exterior walls, and they're making him go with them. And he said, wait a minute. You're making me, I got to go in there? It's like, yeah. It's like, there's 4 to 5 people in that house. It made them back up, right? It made them back up and regroup. So, you talk about people, and I'm big on this, is like, if you leave your bedroom, it has to be worth dying for. If you cannot accept that, don't leave your bedroom because you may get in a confrontation out there, right? That even though you may win the initial gun battle, you could end up losing it too. So for me at home, it's a rifle with good light on it. Allows me to be able to shoot left, right-handed, clearing corners, clearing from a distance. I set my house up with, I've got cameras, and I also, for people who don't have cameras, set up with your night lights so it casts shadows. So when you leave your bedroom, it's dark. Every place that I need where there's blind corners for me to be able to move to, I've got night lights that are motion activated. If that light's on, I know that somebody activated it, and or if I don't have that, it'll cast shadows. Then I can decide, okay, there really is somebody in my house. I can't go back to sleep. I'm gonna call the police to have them help me, right? And I'm probably going to challenge them from a distance. The only reason why I would confront them is if I had some other family member I had to protect, right? So yeah, setting your house up, having that squared away, knowing how to clear your house. And for most people, right, understand deadly force. That's one of the misconceptions. People don't understand things. One of the biggest things I see happen is when violence comes to bear, most people are trying to rationalize it. They're trying to make sense of why this is going on. Why is this person attack me? Why is these things happening, right? And there's no rationale to it. You cannot apply rationality to the irrational, right? There's no rationale that somebody would break into your house and want to rape your wife or steal your stuff. They're crazy, which is really the most dangerous people you can go against. So, that builds into hesitation, but understanding really, deadly force, when it's acceptable, when it's not, going to people who can train you on that, going to schools that can kind of put you in those environments. So you kind of know what to do and be thinking about it because, the more you think about it, you'll circumvent how you're going to make your decisions.
So I just want to say something really quickly before we wrap up because we're hitting that hour mark. But if you're enjoying this content, please subscribe to the YouTube channel. Or if you're listening to this, make sure that you are subscribing to the Firearms Nation podcast on whatever podcast app that you're listening to, because it helps me bring on more great guests like Bennie Cooley so I can get their information like we just got tonight to you guys, because that's what I'm here to do. I want to get these great thinkers and these great minds talking about stuff so we can get it to you. That being said, Bennie, I want to thank you for coming on the show tonight. What is the best way for somebody to get in touch with you if they want to train with you?
Probably the easiest way is just email Bennie at benniecooley.com. So it's BennieCooley. Benny at BennieCooley.com. And yeah, love to, if you have the desire to be able to do some training, stuff like that, be honored to be able to come out and work with you and be able to help out.
Perfect. And before we get into any questions, I just want to say thank you, Benny, for coming on the Firearms podcast and Firearms Nation podcast and touching base again, because I always enjoy talking with you. I enjoy training with you, and I really like your take on things. So thank you.
I appreciate it. Thanks for having me on, and hopefully, whatever questions we have, we might be able to answer.
All right, so folks, that ends the interview portion. If there's any questions before I let Benny go, you can ask him. If there isn't anything, of course, you can always leave a comment down below, and I will make sure Benny sees it. Or obviously, I'm going to link all his information as well, and you can send him an email if you have any questions, or just follow the guy on social media, because you'll see all the stuff that we're talking about. But it is late. I know it's already 10:30 here on Eastern Coast. I don't see many people logged in anymore, so I'm gonna call it. I'm gonna say like 5 seconds. If there's no questions, we're gonna call it and end this live stream. So thank you everybody who tuned in to watch this show. And of course, thanks to Benny. Someone says that they just missed this. Well, it's going to be instantly up on YouTube. So if you want to hear the replay, if you want to see the edited podcast version, it should be out on Friday. But don't worry about it. And also, Raul Garcia said, "Hi, Benny." I don't know if you know who that is. He's nodding.
He's a good dude from Boise.
He's a good dude.
Yeah, great. Yep, great law enforcement dude, and yep, great shooter.
It sounds familiar to me. I don't know why. But anyways, so everyone listening, thanks again, and I'll see you on the next live stream, or I'll see you on the podcast. Thank you all.